Well, hey, and what's up, guys? This is Justin here, doing a little thing different this morning. We're gonna do a Monday Men of Courage Day. So if you're tuning in right now, just know this is not actually a morning devotional like I have been doing, and I'm now doing on Wednesday. So Wednesdays we're going through the Word, unpacking a verse of the Bible each Wednesday. That's called Wednesday in the Word. This is Monday Men of Courage. This is for guys out there that are interested in knowing more about what it means to be a man of courage, and look into the Bible and see what it has to say about that, but also relevant cultural issues that we're dealing with as men. Let's talk about those things. Let's bring them to the surface and have some discussion around what it means to be a man and to step into the responsibility of leadership that we have as men. And so, one thing I want to start with today is, well, first of all, the subject of today is that good men must speak up. If you're a good man and you think of yourself as a good man, part of being a good man is speaking up, using your voice as a tool of speech to proclaim and declare what's true, what's right, and what's good in your environment. This is something you must do. And let me explain why that's the case, and then we'll talk about biblically what that means and then some practical areas around it. So first thing I want to say is that this idea that good men must speak up assumes that God cares about people. Okay, this assumes that there is a God who's good, who has installed the moral principles of justice and right and wrong into the universe. Like laws, morality are universal, and we can know right from wrong. That's the assumption here, is that God cares about human conditions and cares about people, and therefore when there's right, when there's wrong, we know the difference and we should do something about that. That's what that means. That's assuming that about the world. Okay, and so while God cares about people, there's also evil in the world. If you look around, and you don't have to look too far, you can look in your own heart if you want to. You can look down the street, you can look on the newsreels, you can look on Facebook, scrolling through different updates and things that are happening. Evil is all around us. I really don't have to do much explanation there. It's really self-explanatory. But those two things exist. God cares about people, and yet there's still evil in this world. Now, here's the problem. The only thing required for that evil to perpetuate or to win is when good men do nothing. That's all. If you want evil in your neighborhood, in your community, in your home, in your family, in your friendships, the people you care about to continue, do nothing. That's all you have to do, is nothing. And then evil will win. But that's the problem. Good men in this country, good men around us right now, are doing nothing. And that's all it takes for evil and darkness to perpetuate in any environment. So here's what we have to do. Good men must then put themselves in the way of that evil. That's what it means to stop evil. If you really want to, you hear me say, hey, there's evil all around us. Yeah, God cares about people. He cares about the world even. So what are we supposed to do as a good man who wants to be a good man and therefore must not let the evil perpetuate? What do I do? What does that look like? Here's the principle. Good men must put themselves in the way of evil. Just get in the way. Just get in the way of it. You're not going to necessarily kill the source of it. You're not going to maybe understand the fullness of scope of and the scheme of all the evil behind it. You may not understand the full narrative or how dense of a strategic evil plan is involved in these situations. But in your environment, when there's evil, all you have to do is get in the way. Put yourself in the way. Put your body in the way, in between good and evil. Be the barrier between evil perpetuating. And you can use three things to really get that done. One is your mind. Think about it. Be smarter than evil. Get in the way of it strategically, intentionally, rationally. Use your body. How can you step in the way of evil continuing? How can you physically be present in such a way that you render the evil force from continuing? Thirdly, use your voice. Let your voice be the barrier. Let your voice be the sound of truth that rings light in a world of darkness and evil. Use your mind, use your body, and use your voice. Now, the Word of God speaks about this third one, the voice, in Proverbs 31, verses 8 and 9. In verse 8, Proverbs 31 is saying this about the context is in the context of a son. So like a man, this is like a man's role here as a leader. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. When there's darkness perpetuating, when people who can't speak up are being crushed, ensure justice. Get in the way. Use your mind to think about how I can stop this with words and speak the truth in this situation. And that may cost you something. You may sacrifice your reputation. You may sacrifice being liked. You may sacrifice your job. You may sacrifice a relationship. You may sacrifice what family you have around you, depending on what your family views as good and evil. There's much to be said about the sacrifice that men must take in order to stop evil. But good men must do this if they want evil to stop. He goes on to say in verse 9, yes, speak up for the poor and helpless and see that they get justice. Speak up. Use your words to declare what is evil, first of all, and then point to what's good and true, so that the poor and helpless, those who are being crushed, get justice in your environment. And so for those of us wondering, what do I do with that? I want you to think about like your workplace, your home life, your organizations you're a part of, your kids' schools. Like if there's things going on where there are, let's say, women and children, typically women, widows, and children are typically the most vulnerable in this society, where they are being abused, manipulated, dictated, peer pressured, bullied into things, then it's our job to stop that from continuing. Think about your organization, your house. Is there any women, widows, or children, or elderly who are at the risk of being manipulated, coerced, forced, abused, mistreated? Anyone in my family who's a widow, elderly, child, someone who's weak, hurt, sick, and they're being abused, dishonored, mistreated. It is my job to not let that continue. You must get in the way of that continuing. That's going to put you at odds, bro, as you do that. As you define what good and evil actually is, you're going to rub up against some cultural issues as I'm saying this. For example, what we would say is good for women and children, society is starting to say is bad. We would say it's good for women to thrive under the leadership of a servant husband who is a servant leader. And yet culture, if you have gone to see the movie Barbie, is celebrating that women should use men as play toys, and men should not be leaders. They should be puppets. They should be little puppeteers that women are using for their own sense of feminism and empowerment. So we would come up and say, hey, woman, if you're in that environment, that's actually not good. And man, if you're in that kind of environment and you're being treated that way, you need to speak up, actually, against that. Or children who could be told in this culture that it's good for you to choose your own gender. You're 7 years old. You think you're a boy, but you're a girl biologically. And because the feelings that you have inside of you are authority, we should come by your authority, support your authority, and allow you to change your gender and make a life-altering decision at 7 years old. And we should make sure that doctors and organizations and the government and the schools are all on board with that. And anyone who is not on board with you changing your gender at 7 years old, then you become a bigot and you're bullied. And you're told that you're some immoral dinosaur that can't get on the trend of what's really good and right for society. For example, here recently, I click Google and I'm opening Google up to see what's on my, it's a new tab. I'm just clicking a new tab to go to Google. What shows up on my screen is this: protect trans kids. Protect trans kids. Really? Okay. I can agree that we want to protect kids. I want to protect kids. I've got 3 kids that are little, one that's more grown. I want to protect them all, and we'll get in the way of anything harming them at the cost of my own life. Now, when they say protect kids right here, and they put in trans in it, what they mean is what I just was referring to. Protect their rights to be trans and change their genders as kids as freely as they want to. So they're saying what's good in society, what we should protect, is actually what I would call evil. That you're empowering children to make life-altering decisions that they cannot reverse. This is Google projecting and proclaiming something that's evil. So I'm speaking up against that right now. I hope you share this and think about anyone around you, any culture around you, any organization you may be a part of, any school you may be a part of, anyone in your community that's endorsing this idea that it's good to protect trans kids in the sense that you should give them the freedom to make permanent life-altering decisions before they're even 18, that's evil. You shouldn't do that. That's bad for them. You should get in the way of someone doing. You should speak up and say, this is wrong. This is clearly wrong. It's outrageous. No child should have the authority to make that kind of decision. And no parent should come alongside and support a life-altering decision like that will never be reversed or cannot fully be reversed. There are case study after case study after case study showing that parents who have let this stuff happen to little kids are now, they feel dehumanized. They've been at the mercy of some doctor that wanted a ton of money and is supporting this big agenda, and now they realize the mistake they've made and they can't go back and fix it. Their body's been mutilated. Mutilated. There are 300,000 kids in America today, right now, 300,000 that think of themselves as an opposite gender. That's grown by, I think, 500% in the past 4 years. And somewhere along the way, you've got to say, this is a peer pressured movement that's happening at the high towers of education and society. And it's trickling down into schools from universities and governments and news media and Hollywood, to where it is peer pressured around young kids today to be trans. That is a good idea for them. They want to celebrate that and give kids the authority to make that kind of decision. And it's evil. It's twisted and it's dark. And so I must speak up if I see that anywhere in my environment. Child abuse, sex trafficking. These are situations that we must speak up to. If there's a man that you see in your neighborhood is kind of sketchy, kind of weird with kids, gets a little too close, wants to give a lot of gifts, tell him to back up. I told a neighbor at our previous location of residence that he was getting too close. He needed to keep his boundaries. And yeah, it may have sacrificed that relationship, but the guy was extremely sketchy. And he was way too close with kids. And one time I caught him with one of our neighbor's kids inside of his house. And I accused him of it. He said he didn't do anything, wasn't doing anything, that she had snuck in there. But it was very suspicious. I went and talked to the daughter herself personally. I said, hey, did anything happen in that house? And she said no. So she just snuck in and she was playing and ended up in her neighbor's house. And so I don't know what happened there, but I, from that point forward, was suspicious and kept my distance with this guy, kept an eye on this guy and let him know I had an eye on him. And that sacrificed the relationship. But I wanted to get in between what was good and evil. I'm going to stand in the way. I'm going to let him know I have my eyes on him. So if he tries to do anything else, I'm on it. If you've seen the movie Sound of Freedom, then it's something that you're probably processing in the moment. How do I stop evil men from becoming sex masters and making little kids sex slaves into this world of human trafficking and pornography and sex for kids that are 5, 6, 7 years old? And if you haven't seen it, it's a quick way to find yourself enraged at the actual darkness and evil in the world. Enraged. And so I suggest you go watch it, because this is a real situation. Again, for evil to perpetuate, good men just do nothing. And so I would encourage you to be a part of the organization that movie's behind. That's behind that movie. Go look up the story and see how you can get involved in supporting the work financially and using your voice in the community to be aware. I think awareness is a big thing when it comes to evil. When you're using your voice to say, hey, this is going on, this is wrong, that's bringing awareness. That's into your environment. That will bring about change. Awareness is the first step to change. People have to know where evil is going on, because most people are just going to let it keep trickling. If it's a trendy thing, right? Then people just let it on until someone is got the backbone to say, no more. This can't continue. In your work, if you're part of a organization that's just celebratory of things like the de-infrastructure of the nuclear family, and celebrating things like divorce, celebrating things like abortion, celebrating things like racial conversations that are inauthentic, to be inclusive. You're a part of an organization that's clearly making you feel like something's wrong in it. There's some wrong stances here. There's some people that are going to get hurt here. Then you have to speak up in your organization. You need to, at the cost of your own job. You need to do that. And that's because your character and who you are matters more than what job you're in right now. And the more you sacrifice your integrity, the more you're going to breed real deep insecurity inside your soul. You're going to question yourself as a man, and you should. If evil's going on around you and you're not speaking up to it, then you should question your integrity. And when you step into what God has for you, and it has for me, to be the kind of men who speak up for the poor and helpless, to see that they get justice, just to ensure justice for those who are being crushed. Then we get to stop evil from continuing, one little piece at a time. One little piece at a time. I know I can't save the world. We can't save the world. But we know this ultimately matters to God. Because why? The beginning we said God cares about people. And remembering my own sin will remind me of how much I need to be a part of the good in the world today, because I have been a perpetuator of evil in my own life. I have been a causer of sin, a destroyer of relationships. I've fell into lust and adultery and all kinds of things that have hurt people. And yet God moved towards me and cared enough about me to die in my place and rise again, that I may have new life in him, to where the justice of God for my sin was put on Jesus. Because God cares about us, but he also cares about justice. And so when God died in Jesus in my place, God satisfied his justice, and then also gave me a way of finding forgiveness, that I might get new life and move towards being a man of justice, instead of being a man who creates injustices in my environment. So because we have a God who cares about us, who cares about justice, we can trust that if we step into obedience in this area, preventing any man from moving towards abuse, any man in our environment. Man, I know you understand what I'm saying when I talk about your kids. Maybe you have a girl. Maybe your daughter is a girl. I know it. You know what I'm saying. And allow that responsibility you feel for that girl to extend beyond just your family? What about the family of women? What about a relationship where you know a woman who's getting beat? Step in. Don't let it continue. Get in the way. You think, well, I can't interfere with the relationship. Well, yeah. Okay, so let evil continue. That's all it takes, is for good men to do nothing. We're called into trusting God to ensure justice happens in the world. And it requires us to get in the way. Good men must put themselves in the way of evil. This is how we stop it. So, brothers, hey, I've been trying to contain like that inner sense of, just kind of like anger at things that I think about in this conversation as they arise in me. Just there's so much going on in the world that I think must be stopped. And yet I know I can't do all of it. Like I know I have a little bitty piece of that. And so it infuriates me, but it also just reminds me that God's good. He will help us with this process, as ultimately we know he will win. There is a God of justice in the universe who runs the universe. He is the king of the universe, and he will see to it that justice ultimately wins. So let's just do our part, our small little part, day by day, as we see any injustice in our environment, that we'd speak up for those who feel powerless, who feel weak, who are poor, and who are being crushed.